Steady, rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitors filled the intensive care unit as I pulled off my latex gloves, the crushing weight of a 16-hour shift settling heavily into my joints. I glanced toward the large wall clock, realizing with a sudden jolt of panic that the hands were already sweeping past 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My phone had remained locked inside my staff locker all morning while I assisted in an emergency coronary bypass, leaving me completely cut off from the outside world on the most important day of my life. For months, my fiancé, Marcus Vance, had promised me that our courthouse wedding would be a quiet, intimate affair scheduled precisely for 2 p.m., leaving me just enough time to dash across the city after my shift. I practically sprinted down the sterile hospital corridor, my sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum as I gripped my car keys with trembling fingers, desperate to reach downtown before the doors locked. The heavy autumn rain was hammering against my windshield as I navigated through the gridlocked downtown traffic, my heart hammering against my ribs in sync with the windshield wipers. When I finally slammed my sedan into a parking space outside the municipal building, I didn't even care that I was still wearing my faded green medical scrubs and paper shoe covers. The grand marble pillars of the courthouse loomed above me like ancient silent judges as I pushed through the heavy revolving doors, catching my breath in the damp air of the lobby. A security officer stationed near the metal detectors offered me a lingering, sorrowful look that made my stomach drop into a bottomless pit of cold dread. I didn't say a word as I followed his reluctant gesture toward the end of the grand hallway, where the muffled sounds of a crowd echoed from behind a pair of tall oak doors. Pushing the heavy doors open, I expected to find an empty courtroom waiting for my late arrival, but instead, I walked straight into a fully decorated celebration. The air was thick with the scent of white orchids, the exact floral arrangements I had explicitly told Marcus I wanted for our future home. There, standing before the micro-clerk at the magistrate's bench, was my fiancé looking immaculate in a tailored charcoal suit, his hand firmly clasped around another woman's fingers. It was none other than Clara DuPont, my childhood neighbor and the woman I had foolishly trusted as my closest confidant throughout my grueling medical residency. Clara was draped in an elegant ivory silk gown, her eyes shining with triumph as she held a handwritten marriage certificate that had already been stamped and finalized by the court clerk. Before I could even process the visual betrayal, Marcus's overbearing mother, Eleanor, stepped out from the small crowd of onlookers to block my path. Her face twisted into a smug, victorious sneer that revealed absolutely no remorse for the ambush they had meticulously orchestrated behind my back. "You always did prioritize your charts over your relationship, Dr. Sterling," she whispered coldly, her voice carrying across the silent, stunned courtroom. "You missed the ceremony because you chose your patients, so Marcus chose a woman who actually puts him first." My knees felt hollow as I looked past her to see Marcus quickly averting his gaze, refusing to meet my eyes as Clara rested her chin proudly on his shoulder. True character isn't revealed during the moments when everything goes according to plan, it is forged when the entire foundation of your life is systematically dismantled in front of your eyes. Turning back toward the corridor on autopilot, my vision blurred with a mixture of pure exhaustion and blinding humiliation as I struggled to find the exit. I collapsed onto a wooden bench just outside the courtroom doors, desperately trying to unknot the paper shoe covers from my sneakers with shaking hands. That was when a shadow fell across the polished floor, and a tall man in a dark trench coat stopped directly in front of me. He held a thick manila folder under his arm, his expression carrying the quiet, unyielding authority of someone who spent his life dealing with cold realities. "Dr. Nora Sterling?" he asked, his deep voice slicing through the foggy chaos of my mind as I slowly looked up. I managed a weak nod, wiping a stray tear from my cheek as I tried to regain a shred of my professional composure. He reached into his coat jacket, pulling out a gold shield that identified him as Investigator Kenneth Vance from the State Financial Crimes Task Force. "I've been trying to intercept you at the medical center for the past 48 hours, Doctor," he explained, pulling up a chair directly across from me. He opened the heavy folder, revealing a neatly organized mountain of bank statements, corporate filings, and forged signatures that instantly grabbed my attention. "I am deeply sorry about the timing of this intervention, but your fiancé and his new bride are the primary subjects of an active grand larceny investigation." Investigator Vance began laying out the documents across the wooden bench, pointing to a newly formed entity named Vance and DuPont Acquisitions LLC. My breath caught in my throat when I saw my own medical license number and social security information listed as the primary financial backing for the corporation. He explained that over the past 11 months, Marcus had used a power of attorney form, one he had slipped into my pile of hospital payroll paperwork, to open multiple fraudulent lines of credit. He had systematically drained my personal savings account of over $95,000 to fund lavish real estate investments registered under Clara's name. The puzzle pieces instantly locked into place as I realized why Marcus had been so fiercely protective of his laptop and why he had pushed for an early courthouse date. They moved the ceremony up by 2 hours today because they knew the financial freeze was going into effect at midnight, Investigator Vance noted grimly. I stood up, the overwhelming grief transforming into a cold, clinical anger that felt identical to the focus I channeled during a critical patient resuscitation. I walked back toward the double doors of the courtroom, my posture straight and my voice entirely steady as the investigator followed closely behind me. We entered the room just as Eleanor was raising a glass of sparkling cider to toast the newlyweds, the crowd freezing as my green scrubs cut through the elegant gathering. Marcus stepped forward, his slick demeanor faltering as he spotted the law enforcement badge gleaming on the investigator's belt. Marcus Vance and Clara DuPont, you are both being formally served with federal asset freezing injunctions and criminal subpoenas for corporate fraud, Investigator Vance announced loudly. Clara dropped her bouquet of orchids onto the floor, the white petals scattering across the marble as two uniformed officers stepped into the room from the side exit. Marcus frantically looked toward his mother for support, but Eleanor had already backed away into the corner, her smug smile completely vanishing. I walked up to the bench, looked at the man I had loved for 3 years, and placed his fraudulent diamond ring directly onto his copy of the subpoena. I spent my night saving lives while you spent yours stealing mine, I said quietly, before turning my back on them without waiting for an answer. The legal battle that consumed the following 6 months was an arduous, unglamorous marathon of depositions, forensic accounting, and exhausting courtroom testimonies. I hired a relentless forensic attorney who successfully traced every single stolen dollar back to Clara's hidden offshore accounts, securing a full restitution judgment in my favor. Marcus and Clara's high-end real estate venture shattered under the weight of the criminal indictments, leading to a public asset liquidation that left them completely bankrupt. Their rushed courthouse marriage dissolved into bitter mutual lawsuits before their first anniversary, with both of them facing significant prison sentences for corporate forgery. I watched their public downfall from a distance, feeling no sense of malicious triumph, but rather a profound, liberating sense of relief. My true healing didn't happen inside a courtroom, it happened back within the chaotic, beautiful walls of the pediatric intensive care unit where my hands actually belonged. The ultimate validation arrived when the hospital board appointed me as the chief medical director of the new trauma wing, acknowledging my unwavering dedication to our patients. I eventually moved out of the downtown area, purchasing a sunlit cottage with a sprawling garden where my newly adopted golden retriever could run freely. Sitting on my porch on a quiet summer evening, I looked down at my hands and realized they were meant for healing, not for holding on to people who didn't deserve them. I had survived the worst storm of my life, and in the process, I had finally rediscovered the woman I was always meant to be.